Testing, testing. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Greetings. Let me be the first to thank you all for attending. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cameron Rother. I am the current Secretary for Student Government, and I have the honor of introducing Dr. Anna Lee and Dr. Mark Ward for this year's last lecture. Dr. Anna Lee Ward directs the WENT Character Initiative, a campus-wide effort to promote excellent moral characters and lives of purpose. She is a native of Denver, Colorado, and has a degree in communication and theology from Calvin University, Colorado, State University, and Regent University. She spent much of her career as a professor of communication arts, author of The Mouse Morality, The Rhetoric of Disney Animated Film, and she has also published a popular culture and on character. At the Wendt Center, Dr. Ward works with the students in the Wendt Character Scholar Program and with faculty and staff in book discussion groups and the publication of a journal with articles by UD faculty members on topics such as character in play, and character in social media. Dr. Mark Ward joined UD in 2010 as Vice President for Academic Affairs. A native of Central Iowa, he has a degree in Business and Economics from Calvin University, the University of Denver, and the University of Illinois at Chicago. After a short career in corporate human resources, he spent many years as a business professor and has published on work and values and work beliefs. At UD, he is responsible for the undergraduate and graduate faculty, the academic programs of study, the Charles C. Myers Library, the Registrar's Office, and the Academic Success Center. This summer, both Dr. Anna Lee and Mark Ward will be transitioning to new avenues of service as they retire from the University of Dubuque. They have 2 married children and 5 grandchildren.
Thank you, I think, here. So, well, we've had a few weeks now to think about doing a lecture together, and it's really been...
Okay, it's been traumatic. It's been painful. 25 years ago, we led a Sunday school series together, and it went well. We got good feedback anyway.
Yeah, but it was a very difficult experience for us, and we haven't done this since. So that's... So the lesson we learned is we have very different styles about how to prepare for something like this. And
we like being married.
Yeah, so we're going to try to get through this and stay married in the process. I really have 2 goals for today. One is to stay married, and the other is to keep my dignity intact, and I think I'll get one of the 2. That's all I really think I'm going to get.
Only one. He only gets one.
Yeah. So anyway, as we look back on our 14 years at UD and the last 40 years in higher education, the message we want to leave you with is that on the way to your destination, don't neglect the journey.
And in that process, we have 6 lessons we'd like to share with you because we've learned a lot because, we're old. So, first lesson, you never know when God is going to bring someone significant into your life.
So when I graduated from college, it was kind of a tough time in the economy, but I did have an opportunity to go to graduate school at the University of Denver, and I actually found this awesome paying job for 20 hours a week. So I was on my way to Denver, and I had a high school friend who lived there, so I moved in with him, and he lived on the 7th floor of an apartment building in an apartment, and so that's where I moved into. And about 4 months into my time in Denver, it was early January, I got on the elevator on the 7th floor, and it went down to 5 and stopped, and the doors opened, and there she was. There she was. the angels were singing and the clouds parted, but actually none of that happened at all. No. What really happened was...
Aren't you Danita's
yes,
friend?
Yes, we had gone to the same college. We had mutual friends, but had never met in college. And so that was sort of how we met, in an elevator in Denver, Colorado. True story.
However, as we got to know one another, we discovered that there were 3 times when we might have met, but God protected us. The first time was a wedding I had to go to with my family in Michigan from Denver, snowstorm in Iowa, go figure. And we got stuck in Newton, Iowa. If only my family had called the church, we would have been put up at his house. But we didn't. And it was probably a good thing. Do we have any pictures of you with it? No, okay. And the second time, the next summer, he was doing a youth mission trip in California, and I, in Denver, was also doing a youth mission trip in California in an adjacent community, and they planned an event for those 2 teams to get together, but I got sick and flew home, and so we didn't meet. Yeah, pretty crazy. And then I think that there was a party in my apartment at college, but I had something else to do, so my roommates, friends of his, had the party, and I never met him.
And we all both feel that probably had we met earlier, we would not be together. So that was God protecting us. So, yeah. Well, I think the lesson here is that you never know when God is going to put someone important in your life. And I think about that in the context of Matthew 25, where it says that God is going to commend the righteous because he will say to them, "You cared for me." And they're going to say, "Well, when did we care for you?" And he'll say, "Well, whenever there was someone who needed help, you helped them." And so, to me, I think every encounter is really an opportunity for us to meet someone significant. And it may not end up in marriage, but it is an opportunity to invest in other people, and that's always important. But...
So, if you're thinking about how God might bring something significant into your life, you want to care about the people in front of you, but you also want to remember that the wedding picture will eventually look ridiculous.
I don't know what the photographer was thinking, because it's sort of like, pretend there's a comet up in the sky, and we're both kind of like, I don't know what we... It's very, very, very...
A wedding picture, if I have any advice to you students out there, is a point in time. It's a rest stop on your journey. And it is affected by styles and fads, and they will inevitably change.
This was the Princess Diana era, by the way. So, yeah. All right. So, lesson number 2 is be grateful for the friends that God brings into your life. I think many of you will find yourself, if you don't already, in situations like ours, in that we have to say, where is home? Well, is it Central Iowa? Is it Denver, Colorado? Is it Chicago, where we lived for 30 years? Or is it Dubuque? Well, it's all of those, and in some ways, none of those. That's just the nature of how we all move around. I think what we've had to learn is how to not just see people in front of us and see them as important, but how to maintain those relationships. So we've had to make an effort to say, how do we maintain friends? I think that's one of the critical lessons that we can all learn, is how do we maintain relationships. And so we have friends and relatives around the country, and we've also had to learn that they may be slow to reciprocate. We have some dear friends who can never plan anything to save their life. And so if we're going to get together, it's going to be on us. But rather than focusing on that, we'll say, oh, well, if we have to do the initiating, that's okay. We're learning to avoid measuring who puts more into the relationship and be grateful for the gift of friendships.
And those friendships become so important to me. I love to connect with people, but when I came here, I didn't have a network, I didn't have friends and family in town, and found myself having to find lecturers or people to participate. It's amazing how my friends have come through. So this map right here is a map of people that have continued to be friends for me and have served on our journal as respondents, or have come in as went character lectures. And these people continue to be a part of my life, and that's the beauty of these days. It's not time-bound, it's not space-bound. We've got technology that we can always look someone up and find them. So don't think that you will get away from us.
So be grateful for the friends God brings into your life, and be prepared for your friends to place you in very embarrassing situations. So I went to high school in Pella, Iowa, and you might know Pella's a Dutch community, and they're very famous for their tulip time. And this couple here, this is a high school friend of mine. She and her husband are physicians in Seattle, Washington, and she is brilliant, so she decided to learn Dutch and all this, so she's really into this. And so we were going to meet in Pella to see each other. And she had the great idea that we're going to dress up in costumes and scrub the streets of Pella as part of their tulip time. So, in fact, that's what we did. And I just want you to know, if Annalie had suggested this, there would be no picture like this, okay? We would not have done this. But because this kind of offbeat situation is really important to these friends, here we are. And by the way, this is the very first and last time this picture will be seen.
So our encouragement is be grateful for the friends that God brings into your life. Different friends, different situations, but they all are valuable and give us connections in ways that help make us who we are. And I think that's a real gift. So the next lesson we have is that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah, so listening is obviously a really important skill, and what I've really come to see for both faculty and administrators is that listening is the essential skill. I think for faculty members, just that ability to listen beyond what students might be saying to you in the classroom, to really listen to what's important to them, that they may come in not really understanding what they even want to do in life, and trying to listen beyond the words to figure out what it is that makes those students tick, what gives them passion. I think that's a gift so many of our faculty members here have. And it's true for administrators as well. Former colleague that many of you know, Gail Hayes, when she retired, I think she said something really profound. She said that, some people talk about the dark side of administration, and the dark side isn't that you have to make decisions and be businesslike or whatever. The dark side is that you have to listen to a lot of things that then you just have to hold yourself. That the reality is there's a lot of pain, a lot of struggle in people's lives, and part of using those 2 ears and just the 1 mouth is knowing when you can't talk about things. And so that's been, I think, a lesson that I've learned, but also one that continues to challenge, is that, we have so many great people, but people who need a listening ear, and sometimes that's the best thing you can give them.
And I just echo that. One of my favorite things to do as a faculty member was student advising. Not because I had all the answers, but because I love listening to people's lives and trying to help them see what's inside them. And listening is a vital part of student advising. So that has just been a gift to have students in our lives. And we've really enjoyed that part. And then we've gotten to listen to faculty. And what a gift. It's just a gift. So never underestimate the need and time for listening. Oh, and listening carefully.
Yes. So it's another story about me. So anyway. Well, it turns out that just one letter can make a big difference in what you hear. So we actually asked a colleague from our former institution, what stories do you have about us? He had all these wonderful, nice stories about Annalee, but his first story about me was a search we were doing for a faculty member, happened to be in psychology. She was from New England and had a very thick New England accent. And so we were interviewing her and talking to her about her research. And what I heard was that she did research on how blonde people were perceived in public settings. And I thought, well, first of all, it didn't surprise me because, PhD students, you always got to come up with something different. But my mind right away went to well, is it natural blondes or is it dyed blondes? And so thinking through all this, and we happen to be at an institution that the major feeder schools were ethnically Northern European. And so they had lots of tall blondes, okay? And so I was selling the institution. This is going to be great for you because you're going to have all kinds of subjects and so on. And so it just went on. And the next day, she left, went home. The next day, the committee got back together, and their first thing was to turn to me and say, "What in the world were you doing yesterday?" She said blind, not blonde. So anyway, listen carefully is the lesson there.
Yeah. Oh, so carefully.
And lesson number 4. So you can never see too much of God's world.
So we love to travel, and we love to introduce others to it as well. We have led student groups all through Europe. One trip, without you, we went to this, I'm looking at my daughter here, who we went to Turkey, to the sites of 7 churches of Revelation. We saw all kinds of interesting things, but the thing about learning about God's world is how it opens things up. For the Turkey trip, it opened up the book of Revelation in new ways. I mean, you can't read the letters to the churches there without understanding geography and standing in those places and learning. For example, a church, there's a letter to a church that says, "You're neither hot nor cold, I spit you out." And it is located right along a river that comes out of the cold, icy cold mountain water and the hot springs right above it. And there you have this church located right between the two. It's lukewarm. So things like that have opened up our experiences. And then I've had opportunities to travel to England and study the educational system, to this particular picture, Edinburgh, Scotland, and learn all kinds of things. But one of the things that has fed my life and brought back, I was on a research team. And we studied in that little turret thing up there for a week. We met as a small research team working together. And these experiences continue to teach me that there's a lot of ways to learn. And there's a lot of different ways we can practice our education. And so that's been one delight.
And then about 25 years ago, we led an intergenerational mission trip to Cancun, Mexico. That's the picture on the left there. And it really changed forever my perception of people in less developed countries. I had been to Mexico before, just across the border, and what struck me is people don't seem to finish their houses. It's sort of half finished, and what's going on here? Do they not care? What's that all about? Well, we got a chance to live with families in Cancun. These are the families that are supporting those big resorts that everybody goes to. And what we found out is there aren't mortgages for these people. So what they're doing is they're building their home as they can finance themselves the resources. And so instead of looking at this and saying, oh man, they never finish anything, what I now look at it and say, here are people who are lifting themselves up by their bootstraps and are making a better life for their family, even though it may take more time. And so I think that's the kind of thing that seeing the world helps us understand is just how many ways that God is at work, and also how many ways people are living faithfully.
And as you encounter people in different expressions, you get to see the richness of God's world, the diversity that is created, and how I don't fully embody God's image, nor do you. But when we get to meet more people, we get more glimpses of how big and varied God is, and how much, bigger than my mind is that God is. So travel continues to do that for us. So you can never see too much of God's world. Oh, yes.
But the world doesn't need to see that much of you, okay? So this takes a little setup here. For some time, we had a program here in Singapore, and we actually went there to visit that program. And as you might know, Singapore, it's going to take a while. Just sit down. So you might know that Singapore is on the equator. It's very hot there. And so it happened to be a Sunday. We had done some things during the morning, and so we had a little break, and we thought, well, we'll go swimming. And turns out there were a series of very poor decisions that were made along the way here. The first one was that Singapore is a very conservative country. You might know, like, they can cane you for chewing gum and jaywalking and things like that. So I blame this on her, that she said we shouldn't go to the pool in our bathing suits. We should put on those bathrobes that they give you, because we don't want to look that shorts and things like that. So we did. We went swimming, and so this isn't us, but you can imagine us by the pool. Annalie decided to go back and get ready before we went out for dinner, and I stayed for a while, and then the next poor decision I made was I took the door that I thought was the closest to getting back to our room, which turned out to be one of those stairwells that's locked doors all the way to the bottom, where it's a fire escape, right? So, okay, fine, I'll go to the bottom. Well, because it was Sunday, all the doors to the hotel, it was a block large hotel on the major shopping street in Singapore. Now, we're not talking shopping like North Michigan Avenue. We're talking like Rodeo Drive, Prada, Gucci, those kind of places that you can't even go in. So I find myself out on the street behind the hotel in my bathrobe and flip-flops. So the only door I know of is around the hotel on that major shopping street. So I had to go down the side street, which happened to have these open food markets. So I was able to walk down past this is actually the street. I was able to walk down in my bathrobe. And then I turned the corner and was able to walk down this major shopping street. And then to top it all off, the hotel entrance was 2 stories up in an escalator that was open air to the public, so I was able to ride that forward. So what I've learned is...
And perhaps we should add, since our daughter came, that she and her husband were in one of the glass elevators across the thing. I mean, we don't know our son-in-law that well yet.
We've only got our son-in-law for 3 months, so...
And he looks out and says, there's some crazy guy over there in a bathrobe.
So we've learned to be more careful. The one thing I know about Singapore is I'm probably on CCTV, and if I ever go back there, they probably have me tagged already, so I don't know if we'll go back. But.
So our next lesson is that you never know how God will weave together the things you've done. And this is my advice for all of us as we think, I'm on this destination, I've got to get there, and this seems like a right turn, but God is amazing in how he takes this thread and weaves it into our life story. So, for example, in my life story, a theology major, really? And I end up working at a seminary, and a directing job and acting. I was acting and directing, and I still get to act. But it's just amazing. Law experience. I worked at CBS, and so had to get familiar with the media in deep ways, and then I ended up teaching media and using those connections, and then coming here. It's amazing how all of these threads for me have been woven together. So we start a podcast because we love it. We make videos. We do these things because we've got all these interests, and it works together.
And for me, I think about my life started actually professional life at International Harvester Company in Chicago, and it was actually a terrible place to work. When I came, they had 80,000 employees, and when I left, they had 20,000, and my job was actually to work with the people who would, the 60,000 who had lost their jobs. So, but what it actually did was it became the basis for my PhD. So it became experiences that I could use later, as well as taught me a lot about what you don't want to do in an organization. But also other just random things, like when I was in high school, I learned how to fly. I got my private pilot's license. Sadly, for our students today, my total cost of getting that private pilot's license was 4 weeks of summer work. So, but what happened was I got it and then went off to graduate school, college, graduate school, moved to Chicago. No place where I could ever actually afford to fly. So I never really used it. And then I get to come here and be part of an aviation program. I also love to sing. At our other institution, I took advantage of the fact that I could take free organ lessons, so I took organ lessons, and so here was able to watch as we selected and installed the beautiful organ in Butler Hall. And I think it's just the way that the patterns of life that aren't necessarily evident, but that end up weaving together as you get later in life.
And so don't forget, God is bigger than what we think is a mistake and can weave things together in amazing ways. And you know the image of the tapestry, if you look on the back, it's knotted and a mess. But you flip it over, there's a beautiful picture. And that's what's happening in your lives too.
But there are some threads that cannot be woven. Even God can't weave playing the accordion into something cool. So I have wonderful parents, but for some reason they thought it was a good idea for me to learn to play the accordion. So I did that. What I did find out about that is that it does nothing for your credibility on the playgrounds. It does not. So, but the pinnacle of my accordion career happened at age 11 when I performed live on our local radio station in Newton, Iowa. And the call letters, by the way, of that radio station are KCOB, so K-Cobb, which seemed very fitting for a live 11-year-old accordion performance. So, by the way, when we moved here, that accordion was still in our basement, and there's one thing that I made sure did not cross the Mississippi River. That accordion was gone. So.
Well, you can always see the destination, but God is calling you to be faithful in the journey is our last point.
And so this is obviously the bridge that crosses the Mississippi here in Dubuque. And really, it's a kind of a profound bridge for us because it was 14 years ago in April when we came here to interview on a Sunday afternoon. We had really never been to Dubuque before. We had gone to Galena and never, went the 12 miles farther to get to Dubuque. So this was new to us. We're crossing the bridge, and Annalee says, "I can't do this." Now, you have to remember, she had never lived in a town smaller than Denver, Colorado. So we spent the days here, and they were really wonderful days in many parts because of the people in this room. And we're crossing the bridge back to Illinois, and we were literally on the bridge and said to each other, "I think we need to move to Dubuque." And so I think that is just part of the way God works. And I would say it wasn't easy, especially for Annalee, because she had to move here without any job. And so that's part of, I think, what happens when God works in your life. But here we are 14 years later, and we can't imagine not being here.
And so one of the things that we wanted to share is our understanding of calling, because we talk a lot about calling on campus with students, with each other. And we draw a lot from a professor by name of R. Stevens, who presents the idea of calling as a wedding cake. And so you think about all of us, I don't care who we are, have this human vocation. We're called to be in community, we're called to be creative, we're called to do creation restoration work. We have this human care, all of us. There's another layer to calling, and that's the Christian vocation, the calling to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, to follow, to belong to God, to see God's work, and to follow there. And then notice that teeny tiny top layer. It's our personal call. And sometimes we think of calling as, I got to get it right. What's that one thing that I'm supposed to do? And a personal call can come in multiple ways, in different times in life, and can change. And that call can be where you're passionate, it can be where you're gifted, where you have interests, and that's great. And sometimes it can even be a call to where I don't want to go, Dubuque, or to something very specific to do. I mean, think about Moses. I can't speak. But God equips us and calls us and helps us to have that particular place. But we never lose our calling to be human, to be disciples, and to be who we've been made to be. And so I just don't get discouraged when you can't see the end of the journey. Don't get discouraged when it's like, that's not where I want to be.
So here we are, 14 years later, and really, looking back, we can't imagine not being here. And there are several reasons. And one is because of this move to Dubuque, we have a daughter-in-law and 3 grandkids that we would not have. And so we were thrilled about that. And we also have to say that our daughter from Chicago drove in for this just today. So thank you, Emily, for doing that. But really, it's more than that. It's all the people in this room and throughout this university that have made this experience, this journey, not just a journey to beyond, but a journey of joy. And so we want to thank you for that.
And we want to just remind you that there are these 6 lessons that we hope have given you something to think about, and we're going to have to end because we really do want to save a little bit of our own dignity.
It's too late
just a
for
little,
that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. At least yours.
Yeah. So we leave you with this, that on your way to your destination, don't neglect the journey, and thank you for being part of our journey.
Thank you.
Just a thank you again to Dr. Smart and Annalie Ward. I wish you guys the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
That is the end of the lecture. There's plenty more food outside, so please go eat because I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Thank you and have a good night.